Ladies and gents, I'm happy to bring to you our first look at the most changed spec from Mists of Pandaria over to Warlords of Draenor, which is the Balanced Druid, an entirely new revamp, new DPS system, big changes afoot. How is it playing? It's my first impressions. As always, this is on alpha, so don't pay too much attention to the damage numbers. It's irrelevant right now. The damage pass hasn't actually happened yet. It'll happen later down the line. So, if you've not been following the news, essentially, your movement between Eclipse, I'm sure many of you have seen if you don't play a Balanced Druid, that you go from Lunar to Solar, is now automated in the game, similar to a Pendulum. It will swing automatically, regardless of what spells you cast. Hit Lunar, swing back towards Solar, swing back towards Lunar. It's not affected by haste or anything like that, and so far. I do kind of hope it changes a little bit. And then it will just automate between the two. So you don't actually have any control other than through the ability Celestial Alignment to reach an Eclipse state. It will just happen all of its own accord until you get out of combat. On top of that, Star Surge has changed. That instant cast spell that Druids are firing off and you have those glorious moments of turret mode. Unfortunately, that's now gone. Star Surge is a spell you cast. You have 3 charges. It also shares its charges with Starfall. So you will have to decide whether to Star Surge or Starfall. Star Surge now does have the added benefit, however, of buffing your next 3 Wraths or 2 Starfires. That's how it works right now. So how does it initially feel? That's the big one, right? How does this feel initially? It's a little bit iffy on your muscle memory, which is something we could probably expect. No longer do you change which spells you cast, either between Wrath or Starfire, when you hit Eclipse. It just doesn't happen that way. You actually change the second the pointer moves from Solar to Lunar. So as soon as you have 1 Lunar energy, it's time to start casting those Lunar spells. They're going to be weaker and build stronger and stronger the closer you get to the Eclipse, but the second you go one way or the other, it's time to start changing. And that is a little bit iffy on the brain and hands, and you'll notice in the footage that I was playing incorrectly for the first 30 minutes or so. I played this for a couple of hours before they took the servers down. It was the first spec I wanted to play, and then it moves around accordingly. So it's very, very awkward on the muscle memory. But about an hour and a half into it, I started to get the grasp of it a little bit. I started to go, okay, it's less fire and forget than I would like. I think that's the biggest change. It's not too difficult to actually get used to changing when you start casting the spells, but it is less fire and forget, and I found myself paying more attention to my Eclipse bar than I would really like. The Blizzard UI isn't the best anyway for tracking something like Eclipse, so add-ons will make it easier. But yeah, it's less fire and forget, whereas previously you would see the big Lunar occur, you get the big fucking shiny moon above your head, and then you're like, oh, I'm casting Lunar spells now all the way till the end until I see the big Solar light up. And not like that anymore. As soon as it switches, you've got to be on the ball a little bit, and there's always this period where you're like, do I cast this spell or that spell? Well, I'm really hoping, and I'm sure they're going to balance this out, but a little niggling feeling is that due to the way it works, it's worth casting like a Wrath at 1 or something like that, and it's slightly better than you've got to wait towards like 20 energy before you switch or something like that. It used to be the case in Kata, or maybe Wrath of the Lich King, that it was actually better to cast a different spell as you move towards the Eclipse, but I'm sure that's not going to be the case. The Star Surge change is interesting because Starfall hits considerably harder. Although we haven't had the numbers really done yet, it's clear that Starfall is now very, very, very powerful. So there's going to be a lot of math going into, are we Starfalling or Star Surging? Is it because you have these 3 charges and they can proc to gain more, similar to Haunt for an Affliction Warlock? It's very much a case of, is it going to be better to do 2 Star Surges as you approach an Eclipse when your spells are more powerful? Is it better to do 2 Starfalls? Is it better to, which combination of those 3 charges is the most efficient? That's going to be for the maths guys to work out, because, as I said, Starfall might only just be an AoE spell. That might be the case now. It's just for AoE, in which case we can chain 3 Starfalls, which is pretty crazy. Or is it better to have one and the other because it's instant cast? How much energy, how much DPS do we get from using that instant cast Starfall compared to doing a Star Surge? Because our energy will run out because we can't control the Pendulum, so we can only get a certain amount of powerful Starfires or Wraths in before we actually lose the Eclipse, so that Star Surge isn't worthwhile. You can see what I'm talking about. There's a possibility of a lot of confusion going on there into what exactly is the best use of these charges, but I'm sure we'll figure it out down the line. I will say a couple of thoughts. One, I found it quite easy to pick up and it was alright, so no problems really, nothing to be panicking about. But I did feel that Solar was almost worthless in comparison to its Lunar friend. And I don't like that. They should both have an exciting period of being, oh, I'm in Solar now, this is cool, I can do this. Or now I'm in Lunar, now I can do this. Obviously Starfall currently is more powerful in Lunar, so there's that going for it. And on the other side, I felt that my Star Surged Starfires were doing more damage and more relative damage than it would be if I did Star Surge Wraths, if that makes sense. Haste might have a big effect on that in terms of we can cast more Wraths at the top end of being towards the solar, therefore using more Star Surges. Again, it's a little bit tricky. But that does mean that potentially this class maintains its skill cap. And that's something a lot of Moonkins were worried about, is where is the skill cap going to go? Because we no longer have dot snapshotting. That's gone. And we no longer have these little intricacies that we were playing with where we were planning our eclipse in the future for what encounters we're about to do, because we're now tied to when this happens. Which brings me to Celestial Alignment. Changed again. This now pauses the pendulum. So you can use it in a very, very bad way. As I did a couple of times, you can use it in a really, really bad way. Because obviously you want to use your Celestial Alignment at the moment you hit either lunar or solar, depending on which is more powerful. And then it pauses the pendulum so you get the maximum benefit of being at that point along the pendulum swing. Use it at a different point and you've lost a lot, maybe potentially a lot of DPS. We'll have to see where the numbers are. But you can certainly use it wrong. This leads to obviously things like Bloodlust. Bloodlust is pot, and you kind of have to wait. If it turns out that Lunar is more powerful, then you will have to wait. If you've just hit Solar, or you're just going towards Solar, you're going to have to wait for the pendulum to swing towards Solar, and then all the way back again to Lunar, potentially, before you pop Celestial Alignment. I'm sure it will be pretty much equal if you're at Solar or Lunar, so hopefully it's not too much of a problem, just something to bear in mind. Obviously, it doesn't matter too much on the pullers. We can use the Astral Communion, correct, towards getting to an eclipse, so we can be in eclipse pretty much straight away as a boss pull start, so that's not a big deal. Hopefully boss pulls won't be as much of an issue in Warlords of Draenor anyway, according to Blizz. TM, we'll wait and see on that one. That's my initial thoughts on it. Nothing too bad there. It's different, for sure. It's different. We knew it was going to be different. Is it worse? No, I don't think so. Is there opportunity for some really nice skill stuff to occur? Yes. Yes, it is. So yeah, I think you should be okay with it. If you're really worried about the balance changes, I read some feedback from some of the top players, and they were like, it seems like you're just making it really easy. It's actually potentially got some nice ways of maintaining the skill cap and the micromanagement that Druids like. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, guys, that's my first impressions. Enjoy.